You believe that thinking is the essence of knowing. Every realization you assume must pass through language. You organize awareness through words, and you trust the structures they form. Yet Ghazali asked, can the heart think without words? He said the intellect depends on language, but the heart depends on direct perception. The intellect describes, but the heart witnesses. You wonder whether understanding can exist without the process of speech. If knowing arises only after you speak it, how can you ever know what language cannot reach? Ghazali suggested that beyond every argument stands a silent intelligence, not emotion, not imagination, but awareness itself. What if understanding begins not with what is said, but with what needs no saying? You examine your reliance on concepts. Every idea you hold depends on definition. Yet Ghazali showed that definition divides. To define something, you must exclude what it is not. But the real, he said, cannot be defined because nothing stands outside it. The intellect's clarity depends on contrast, but truth has no opposite. When you define unity, you have already fractured it. Language creates precision at the cost of wholeness. You realize that thought can organize what appears, but cannot touch what simply is. Every sentence implies separation. If truth has no boundary, what can be said without reducing it? Ghazali himself faced this crisis. He mastered every discipline: theology, philosophy, law, yet each path ended in contradiction. He discovered that reason could justify both belief and disbelief with equal skill. Certainty built on logic collapsed under its own symmetry. This collapse was not despair. It was purification. Through the failure of reasoning, he saw the boundary of intellect. In suspending trust in both sense and mind, he met a knowing that did not argue, compare, or conclude. You sense the same tension within yourself. If thinking can question everything, can it ever rest? What knowledge remains when every method of knowing is doubted? Ghazali divided knowledge into two kinds: acquired and bestowed. Acquired knowledge arises from study and reasoning. Bestowed knowledge arrives without mediation. It is awareness recognizing itself. The first depends on effort. The second depends on receptivity. The scholar cultivates the mind. The seeker purifies attention. For Ghazali, the intellect serves the heart, but cannot replace it. You begin to see that the heart, in his teaching, is not emotion but perception, the organ of direct knowing. If truth is bestowed rather than constructed, can pursuit itself become an obstacle? You start observing the constant activity of your mind. Every moment, words appear: commentary, prediction, explanation. This inner speech feels natural, even necessary. Yet Ghazali said that such speech is the veil of knowledge. Language does not merely describe experience. It replaces it. When everything is translated into thought, nothing is directly perceived. The mind repeats its own voice and mistakes. Repetition for understanding. You realize that silence is not rare because sound fills the world, but because thought fills awareness. If you could suspend interpretation for one moment, would truth reveal itself, or would you lose all sense of meaning? When inner speech stops, you expect absence. But what emerges is clarity. Ghazali described this state as the awakening of the heart, a knowing that is immediate, not inferred. It does not arrive through language, yet it is not vague. It is exact without expression. The intellect argues. The heart recognizes. The intellect asks what something means. The heart sees that it already is. You begin to understand that this silence is not the opposite of thought, but its completion. Thought ends in uncertainty. Awareness continues in understanding. What if words were never the medium of knowing, but its echo? Al-Ghazali did not abandon reason. He disciplined it. He said true contemplation refines the mind until it becomes transparent. A confused intellect cannot serve the heart, just as a cloudy instrument distorts sound. Reflection prepares clarity but cannot produce illumination. You learn that reasoning must exhaust its function, not to conquer silence, but to make silence possible. When intellect becomes precise enough, it recognizes its limit. It pauses naturally, not by suppression, but by understanding. That pause is not weakness. It is readiness. Can thinking, when purified, realize that its highest act is to stop? You may think heart refers to feeling. Yet Al-Ghazali warned that emotion belongs to fluctuation, not truth. Feeling responds to circumstance. The heart perceives what never changes. When emotion is mistaken for insight, clarity dissolves into reaction. The heart that thinks without words does not tremble or rush. It perceives without distortion. You begin to understand that real inward knowing is not an emotional surge, but the still intelligence beneath it. The distinction is subtle but crucial. If both intellect and emotion are movements, can stillness alone reveal what is constant? In Al-Ghazali's mature view, intellect and heart do not compete. They complete each other. The intellect articulates what the heart perceives. The heart verifies what the intellect proposes. When intellect rules alone, knowledge becomes dry abstraction. When emotion rules alone, it becomes blind impulse. Harmony arises when both serve awareness itself. Then thought is not an intrusion but an instrument. You see that knowing moves in two rhythms. Silence perceives. Thought expresses. Neither is higher. Both belong to one reality unfolding in different forms. Can thought remain faithful to silence even as it speaks? When intellect, emotion, and sense align, awareness knows directly. There is no intermediary between knower and known. Al-Ghazali called this the eye of certainty, a seeing that belongs to being itself. This knowing cannot be communicated, for speech divides the unity it refers to. Yet it is not ineffable in mystery, only unspeakable in precision. You recognize that this state is not mystical distance, but immediacy itself, the end of mediation. When you no longer seek truth as something other, you find it as what you already are. What remains to be known when knowing is complete? After insight, thought returns, but changed. It now serves awareness rather than obscuring it. Words become tools of remembrance, not identity. Al-Ghazali said the true scholar is one whose intellect bows to direct knowing. Knowledge is no longer possession. It is participation. You begin to speak again, but each sentence arises from silence rather than noise. Thinking becomes transparent, like glass through which truth passes unhindered. The mind, once the master, becomes the servant of clarity. Can thought remain pure while being used? You began believing that thought defines understanding. Through Al-Ghazali's path, you discover that understanding defines thought. The heart that thinks without words is not mystical escape, but purified. Reason awareness freed from dependence on expression. It does not oppose intellect. It completes it. The intellect measures. The heart knows. This recognition is not conclusion, but stillness. The search ends not in speechless awe, but in unspoken certainty. Truth does not need to be found or described. It only needs to be seen without mediation. When the heart thinks without words, thought itself becomes quiet recognition. What remains is neither silence nor speech, but knowing that simply knows.